So when the conversation inside the industry finally turned serious, about AI. So not pilot this, pilot that, but like really do this. What did you see people getting completely wrong?
I would say that there's a huge, enormous gap between what AI companies think pharma needs and what pharma actually needs. The gap is huge.
I'm sort of forced now to ask you this because you spoke about how startup founders pitch pharma. What is that one phrase that the moment a vendor says in front of you in your meeting, you just completely mentally check out and start thinking about what's for lunch?
AI powered, end to end. But it's exactly those buzzwords that you had mentioned.
So most overhyped tool in pharma AI right now. If you have been online this week, chances are at least 10 people have told you that AI is going to revolutionize pharma. And one of them was probably trying to sell you something. I am Ayush. On this show, we try to do the opposite. Less pitching the future, more talking to the people who have actually lived it. Now, pharma has been talking about AI for 10 years. Billions spent, hundreds of pilots launched, slide decks for days, and honestly, most of those pilots are sitting in some senior leader's bottom drawer right now, slowly turning into a tax write off. So, the question nobody likes to ask out loud: what actually decides what lives and what dies inside a pharma company? And what does the next pharma AI founder need to know that they very obviously do not know today? My guest today sat in exactly that seat for 13 years. PhD in biostatistics from Penn. Yes, that Penn, the one we all pretend we got into. And then went on to run data governance, real world evidence, and the entire digital agenda for clinical development at one of the largest pharma companies in the world. She's now stepped out and started a new chapter. And what exactly that chapter is, we're going to leave you guessing until the very end of this episode. Victoria Gamerman, welcome to the best AI show on pharma.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, you've had some incredible speakers to date on the podcast. And so thank you for having me. I'm humbled and I'm excited to get into the nitty gritty. So let's dive in.
All right, so I can see you're quite excited. So if there's a guest who's too excited on question one, I love the question one to be as uncomfortable as possible.
Let's go.
So le- I'm going to start somewhere, as I said, uncomfortable. You were not watching AI in pharma from the outside, right? You actually had to make it work. So when the conversation inside the industry finally turned serious, about AI, so not pilot this, pilot that, but like really do this. What did you see people getting completely wrong?
I've been on both sides of the table very recently. I've seen the gap between what some of these AI companies or machine learning or analytics companies and solutions have brought to me in the past. And now I see also and have seen what the decision making process is like, the long, what feels like very long at times, sales cycle, right? And so to me, AI in pharma is really only as good as the ecosystem it runs on, the primary piece there being the data. And so I would say that there's a huge, enormous gap between what AI companies think pharma needs and what pharma actually needs. The gap is huge. But let's dive into exactly what you were just saying around then what happens when some of these things do make or break their way in. Most pharma companies, in my experience, and I've talked to tons of people, I have a huge network. Most pharma companies have, you know, a data quality problem. And that data quality topic, it predates AI, right? Think about where clinical data lives, right? We know clinical data lives in silos. We've got our EDC system, we've got CTMS platforms, we've got safety databases, right? The EHRs. How long have we been talking about this EHR to EDC topic?
100
Is
years.
100 years. And AI
Yeah.
has not magically solved it all. Wave your wand. Not yet. So the data is often it's incomplete. It might be inconsistent, right? You have different standards over time because we've been collecting this data for a long time. So it's not really fit for purpose for things like AI training, not, to build the best models.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then deploying AI on top of a poor quality data ecosystem doesn't solve the problem at all. It amplifies it, and I would say it obscures the challenges that we have. So to me, there's a big foundational problem that really hurts that last mile in being able to embed these various solutions into the pharma ecosystem. And it starts with a robust, appropriate data foundation.
That's a that's a very interesting point. And honestly, I've asked this question to a lot of other experts who came from different sides of pharma functions. This is one of the most unique answers I've received on this. And it actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, AI is as good as the data it is trained on. And pharma is historically known to have a data mess problem. So I think that's very right. And now this one I really want to ask. We if there's a problem that's unsolved for 100 years, as we said, inside pharma, who blocks? You know, who blocks this, who shouldn't not be blocking it, or let's say the flip side, who's championing in it, who shouldn't be actually championing it.
So, I think right now things are moving quickly. And I guess I would say that there is a initial reaction that is a mix of extreme excitement, but it is countered with a very, very deep skepticism. And so, that I would say is really something that challenges the ecosystem, right? You have, on the one hand, people who say we should be AI first, right? And then you have, on the other hand, the data reality check that says deploying an AI model amplifies the problems that you have. We've talked about garbage in, garbage out, but now with AI, it's going to be at scale. And so there's this huge opportunity to then think about what is the governance infrastructure that you need to put in place at first so that your AI is not going to continue to make bad decisions faster. So there are a variety of roles, if you think about a large pharma organization, that are traditional in their scope. Where does AI fit? Is it a technology solution? Is it analytics and part of the analytics team? Because it is everywhere, it's like who governs email? Right? Email was supposed to come in and revolutionize things, and it was supposed to give you 1 day back a week, right? To do important things or get a day off. I'm now reachable anywhere, everywhere, at all hours. I don't know. I think that's a different, right, sort of take. And so it's maybe helping increase efficiency, but who really owns AI is part of the challenge. And so there's this matrix as you look at the solutions. There's the job to be done of what problem is being solved that is owned by a business unit and a function. And then there's the how do we enable the technology to pair with the humans that need to do the work. And so you have this very matrixed environment where people don't really know who needs to do what, which is exactly where digital transformation has been historically, in my perspective and observation, the bridge. It is exactly where you have a transformation function that lives, or a center of excellence. We're seeing that pop up in a lot of places to help be the bridge and bring the multiple stakeholders together. Not an easy job, but that's really, I would say, where there's some real opportunity.
So that's the human side actually, right?
Yeah.
And so this is actually the human problem of AI. And underneath it, I agree 100%. There's a much bigger structural problem. And the industry actually just got a very, very loud reminder of it. And I just recall, I think a few weeks ago, the FDA did something that, most of us in the industry have been quietly, I wouldn't say waiting, but at least dreading for,
Yeah.
right? And the agency sent that warning letter to this pharma company, and for the first time ever, the FDA explicitly cited AI misuse as compliance violation. And the pharma company came back and said, the AI agents were sort of had to write the drug specifications, their procedures, their master production records, and so on and so forth. And then they sort of did not review the outputs; they just let the AI run it. And the FDA's response was absolutely clean and, in my opinion, devastating. That says AI does not get a pass on the old rules. So, my first question, and specifically on this FDA warning letter, because you said, and I agree that this is the human problem of AI in pharma, is when that letter dropped from FDA, what was your honest reaction? I mean, not the executive answer, but like the one reaction, the real reaction you had standing in your kitchen with coffee in your hand, reading on it on your phone.
Yeah. Um, my gut reaction was, I've been saying for years, everyone needs AI governance, right? I mean, you cannot delegate accountability. And so you have to get to a place where you are able to have governance enable smart solutions, right? Smooth, right? What is the expression? Smooth is slow, slow is fast, something, or smooth is fast, right? Essentially, that's exactly what we're trying to get at, which is that you need this element of compliance and understanding of the rules of these algorithms, whatever the algorithm is. And so, a company to blame, AI for missing a validation step really suggests that we need to make sure that the next phase that we go into, it's not just a human in the loop, but it's also human in the lead. And this is what all of my ex pharma friends and I are currently talking about when we think about how and where have we seen challenges and things go wrong. Human in the lead. We have to be smart. Governance is not red tape, right? It is the mechanism that makes AI safe for use. And I think that's the biggest aha moment and the biggest opportunity.
Do you think it is getting increasingly difficult to have human in the loop in AI systems now?
Well, so it shouldn't be, in that you need to know what is your process, right? But then you have to go back to basics. In organizations, and I think the larger the organization, the more potentially complex things are, but no size organization is immune, right? There is invisible process steps and invisible knowledge, meaning that there are people who have been doing something or they just figured out a new way to do something. It's not written down, right? And they are doing things. And so you've got this situation where um, you need to map out the process, you need to figure out what are the steps, and then you need to figure out, how do I accomplish from my end to my end? How do I accomplish these things? but maybe think about it in a more AI forward way. Do I still need to do all these steps or not? There has to be intentionality where you're bringing AI in and how you're going to look at it. Let me give you maybe a couple of examples, right? Think about it like social media, right? Social media can propagate false information at scale in a way we haven't seen before.
Sure.
Well,
Sure. Yeah.
LLMs, they can do the same thing. They can hallucinate clinical information with rather absolute confidence. What's the expression? It's something like, you know, sometimes wrong, but never in doubt. LLMs are sometimes wrong, but they are never in doubt. And so, in clinical development, an AI hallucinating, for example, eligibility criterion could delay a program by months. Worst case scenario can have huge patient impact. So the human needs to be in the lead to not only say, here's the guardrails of where I step in, here's the guardrails of what you do and don't do, but also here's where I intend to use AI and here's where I won't use AI. And I think this is where we're seeing also to the for earlier question you had asked, this tug and pull of forces because there's a fear of the unknown and there's an appetite of excitement, a potential to do things faster, to save money, to get better ROI.
Yeah.
But without that governance, and this is exactly what the FDA is in my translate in Victoria's translation saying, right? They are saying without the governance, you do not have AI that is safe to use, right? And they actually,
But
by the way, even in January, right, earlier this year, there was a published guiding principles for good AI practice, right? One of the
yeah.
principles was human-centric by design. We just talked about that, right?
Yeah.
And another principle was data governance and documentation.
Okay. Let me so let's stress test this idea of human in the loop for AI, right? And I want to stress test this particularly with you, because you are the governance person, right? I need to know what are the pressures the data governance guy go through within a pharma company that today have two hypotheses. One is use as much AI as there is in the world to accelerate so that we capture the competition, we capture the market faster, right? Another is let's not do that because if something goes wrong with AI, as happened with the FDA warning letter, the risk is much larger than the reward, right? And then both schools, I talk to so many pharma companies today, a lot of my clients, both schools are very prominent inside a pharma company today, right? So what does a data governance guy, how does a data governance guy manage this conflict of ideas?
But it's a terrific, terrific question because this is, I would say, a really big tension point. This is where I would say also digital transformation gets a lot of heat and a lot of pressure from multiple sides of the business because you are in that translation bridging role and responsibility. So, from a data governance lens, I think there are a couple of key components, right? Number one, we have to think about what is our foundation, right? What are the critical data assets that we need in the organization, right? And how do you make that determination? Well, some of it is going to be driven by the key critical business continuity programs and what we need to do to make sure those programs continue to run and that they're running on the most appropriate data. Then there's the component of, well, how do we then do innovation? So there needs to be a protected, separate component of that ecosystem that says, well, we've got this new novel idea. We've got a team ready to go to test this new AI solution or a new pilot, but we need to make sure that our testing doesn't impact core business. So now we need to figure out what does that look like from a technical, human, and data perspective, right? So that the processes allow us to keep that separate. And then there's all the other components around data governance. And I would say also AI program governance of how do you select is the right mix of the portfolio, what is the right mix of data assets, and the component of how do we actually bring some of this innovation to life. Understand what is it that the user needs, because we at times have users who would continue to do the same thing. I remember years ago, I was proposing that we migrate some of our data assets to a common data foundation, and it would have multiple layers, right? A raw landing zone, but then we would also curate the data. And I'll tell you why that's important. But I had a colleague who said, that sounds like a lot of work. That's 5 million, euros year over year. I can just hire 10 people to do that in Excel for a third of the price. I mean, that's the other piece. I hear a lot on LinkedIn and in other places of people saying, look what LLMs did with the internet. We don't need AI ready data. We look what LLMs did. They were just came in, we just gave them everything, and that's great. In our world, that doesn't work as easily because what is, you know, in row 3, column 12, the number 7 mean? You need context.
Going back on the FDA letter, because I mean that's such a profound incident, in this whole AI for pharma space, globally, not just the US, right? And I have to ask you this, and your opinion on this. The same FDA that just issued this letter is reportedly running its own internal AI tool called ELSA. And that tool has been reportedly been found hallucinating fake studies. FDA employees themselves have said that the tool is making up citations to papers that do not exist. So the agency is policing AI use in the industry while struggling with its own AI tool. Now, as someone who has briefed regulators for on this for years, what what do we do with that? Is it fair? Is it ironic? Is it actually useful? Because now the FD understands the failure models from inside. What's your take on
I would recommend that the FDA consider some good AI governance. You
that?
know, I think that's really what is, ultimately needed. So, I mean, if we go back to the warning letter, right? So, what happened was that there was this issue of, lack of human review and some sort of quality of approval, right? They had
Right.
found something like, the they didn't complete the required validation steps in the process. And I think that I had read and this is maybe some insider gossip, right? But I had read that it's something like, the AI agent never told me that, I needed to do that, right? There's a process. We just talked about that. Right. So then what does this mean, right? The big implication for us going to the FDA and for the FDA to then, reflect on internally because now they've seen what the risk and potential negative impact is that AI does not excuse the failure to implement your fundamental controls. I don't know about you, but in my experience, when I work with some of my favorite AI tools, oh yeah, they lie to me. They lie to me all the time. They make up stuff and I push
Yeah.
back.
Wow, that's that's so true. You know, uh, and I've been thinking about this, and I think the other day I was actually watching another podcast where there was this guy who said when AI came in, the promise was that I now will have to work less because AI will do my work. But since the time AI is in, I'm working more.
I would say that from a governance perspective, I do see that most of the AI tools in pharma die in what, we call a pilot purgatory. And honestly,
Yeah.
the reason for that is often not technical. Of course, there is the technical component of the data governance and the, rules, but we have brilliant AI teams build great tools, sometimes actually in isolation without talking to the end user. And more specifically, if you build a solution, you have to build a solution that reduces friction. Otherwise, if you do not reduce friction, the adoption will be zero. To create a data product that fits a single solution, but fits other solutions. So get it 80% of the way there so that you can now say, every time a new challenge comes up, I have to adapt 20%, the last 20%, right? Maybe a few variables, maybe a few features for a particular model to be run or an algorithm. But I am 80% of the way there for 100% of the use cases we anticipate. When I first started up the data governance function in my previous role, I had some brilliant partners in technology because I was on the business side. I wasn't in the tech sector. And
Huh.
right, as we talked about, that's that bridge you need to get AI into practice. So I was on the business. I had some great technology partners. My great technology partner said, "Hey, Victoria, you got to come check this out. Look what we built. In this catalog we have, anyone can go in, they can look up and they can find what clinical trials we have, and then they can push a button and they can download the clinical trial data."
Mhm.
I said, "Oh, no, no, over my dead body. That is not right." So they had a great solution, but without
Yeah.
understanding the implications that we have, informed consent forms and other documents and other rules around how you can and cannot use that data. And so, this is exactly, I would say, a lot of the examples of the tension. So it's one thing of getting the data in, and then it's another thing to figure out how to get the data.
Just to summarize, so let's say if there's a problem that data governance solves it in 7 days today, do you think integrating AI will now help solve it in 5 days or one day?
It's a terrific question, actually. I welcome the conversation around this. My critical focus has been around bringing AI to solve problems in other spaces. We've seen in data governance certain tools that help us, for example, identify data quality issues so that we can more quickly
Got
figure out how to get back to users or have them, go specifically to see which um, data data creator needs to change, because data governance, we don't change the source data. The creator has to update it. We have to have it go back
it.
through the pipeline. And so that's been an area where I've definitely seen analytics and advancing analytics help to more quickly, and there are solutions to that point. Um, will it help us build pipelines? Maybe some vibe coding would, but again, you got to have the human to know, which components of which code and whether it's Python or SQL or how do we move the Parquet files around, right? Those are questions that I think still at the moment are tricky. The context piece, I would say, is a huge opportunity. So being able to have that context and to have it learned context from other pieces of information. And I am very hopeful that as more organizations build up robust knowledge graphs, that should be a huge accelerator as well.
Okay. All right. I think that sums it up pretty well. And if you are at I would say at gunpoint, if you are sort of forced to choose between AI solving problems with all its hallucinations and lie versus humans solving the problem with obviously the human related problems as well. Not that human don't hallucinate and lie. Which one would you pick?
I would pick the AI one
Oh wow! Really?
because I think that we as
Wow!
humans have a chance to jump in and save the day. right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can then really make the case that says, look what your AI system has done. Now you have a trust issue, right? And if we can't trust it, you need the people. And the people are then going to be telling you what to lead. And so this is going to make in the next 5 years, but probably in the next 6 to 12 months, some beautiful horror stories, unfortunately, where everyone is going
Yeah.
to, I hope, go back and say, okay, we really don't have to choose between those two extremes you just put, me in. But really, we have to figure out how to go with AI and where the human is actually controlling what we do and decide.
I could never have imagined you would answer that. That's such a human answer, right? Blame it on the AI. Wow. All right.
As sitting in my, big pharma seat, I saw tons of startups come through, tons of things come through. And, then the question becomes, well, how can I trust what your solution is doing? How can I trust that your algorithm is, right? You're doing this. I've got this 55,000 global organization and you're doing this with 7 people.
Yeah.
You know, how can I trust it?
It's like the same first date problem, right? Right? How do I trust you? You're not.
And so, I would say that there is a lot that founders can do. But one of the to help build up that trust, there's publications, right? There's letting some of the technical to technical folks chat about what's under the hood. But if you're in the founder seat or you're, in the top executive layers, you have to figure out how to stop talking about your damn algorithm, because I would say that pharma buyers are not buying your algorithms, they're buying
Yeah.
outcomes. And so
Yeah.
I want you to tell me, like, does this reduce my trial timeline? Does this de-risk my development program? Help
Yeah.
to frame out your solution in terms of
Yeah.
how it unlocks my organization's probability of success. And then we can have the
Uh,
technical conversation, technical to technical person.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I'm a founder. I talk to pharma companies, so that sounded so much a commentary on myself. No, but I agree, and I meet pharma companies, and and I face the same questions. Uh, can I tell you this? Back in the day when we would pitch our services for AI, and I was no different, and I would go on these demo calls, and my entire calls, you know, was filled with these keywords, buzzwords, right? AI powered, holistic, end to end, right? AI model, machine learning model, whatnot, right? And I hardly saw a tinkle in anyone's eye ever, right? So, when we started working with guys in pharma on the AI space, I mean, we've been building software for pharma for more than 10 years now. We've been building decision intelligence products for pharma for about 11 years now. And we've been building AI for pharma for about I, close to 3.5, 4 years now. Uh, Today, when I talk to my clients, and they ask me these questions, the only thing I focus on is human in the loop. And if even if my client asks me today that, Ayush, is it a possibility we can do it end to end, right? So I mean, very recently I was talking to this client, and he said, all I want is, this is my indication. I think that was PBC, and they were like, we need to know what is happening in the PBC space in real time. So everything that's happening around, you build connectors, you build everything, all of that goes into that context engine. You build a model that generates my contextual intelligence, right? And then it generates newsletters, and in real time keeps on going to my CEO, my strategy heads, my regional teams across the world, end to end. And they said, we need this end to end process, like, right? And me as a founder, it was such a such a, I would say, a thirst trap, that I wanted to walk into. And I held myself and I said, let's not do this. I'm telling you, that's a bad idea. Let AI build intelligence. We can do that in real time, but then let's have someone from your team, or at least my team, who approves the newsletters with the context and the reality of it before it goes to the CEO, right? And I think that's something they appreciated the most. And thank God I got that contract. I'm sort of forced now to ask you this, because you spoke about how startup founders pitch Pharma. Uh, what is that one phrase that the moment a vendor says in front of you in your meeting, you just completely mentally check out and start thinking about what's for lunch?
AI powered,
I knew that's going to be the top of the list.
end to end. But it's exactly those buzzwords that you had mentioned. I
Yeah.
mean, think about the story you just told. I think is really powerful because what it shows is that the at least one of the lessons I extract from that story is that the you were able to seal the deal because you had a human in the lead sandwich around
Yeah.
AI, right? The human said, "This is what the problem is." They may have been informed by data, but they've also been informed by their human experience, right? And so together that helped them formulate, "This is the problem we're trying to solve. We need to get these insights to the CEO." You knew what the problem was. You had the specific, narrow, let's say, indication focus. And then there were certain steps. And if you can map out those steps, right, which maybe, the fewer steps, the better with an AI
Right.
lens to it. You don't have to do the same 17 steps we did without the technology. So you've got
Of
your,
course.
3 to 5 steps. You can say, okay, those are going to be informed by AI. And then you said, hey, here's our final stage gate release where we now
Yep.
bring an expert and we have them pressure test.
So the you brought a very, yeah, very interesting point. So in your opinion, what percentage of people, at least inside a pharma company, you know secretly presents a Claude written report at something that they built?
So it's probably something Copilot wrote, knowing most of the large organizations are on Microsoft. Um, but I would say that they're not trying to make it secret. There's just not the culture yet of being transparent about it. Um, and maybe because they're using some of these tools, they are, not being as transparent. I'll give you a simple story. So I worked at a very global organization, and all of a sudden we got the Copilot plugin into our Outlook email. And I noticed that one of my indirect reports, someone in my organization um, was writing back, first of all, very quickly, and second of all, not in their voice. And they were just using their standard sort of auto-generated response. Right? If I had not known that human, I would not have known it was any different. It was well articulated. It, gave me, the quick response, the acknowledgement that they received the request, whatever it was, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but even the Copilot tool inside of Outlook doesn't do, good in terms of responsible AI by then forcing, if you take that auto generated reply, to put a little asterisk at the bottom and say, this response was generated with AI.
Okay. I think let's talk a little bit more. Sorry, let's talk a bit about something else that I've been meaning to talk to you about, which is also something that you are equally passionate about as data governance, which is real world evidence. So, what do you think is sort of encouraging this trend?
I am so excited for this space because I would say that um, it's the biggest untapped opportunity in clinical development to use real world evidence, not just for this kind of post-market activity, but really as a true using real-world data as a true source of
Yeah.
clinical intelligence that informs every single phase of that drug development life cycle. I think it's a huge untapped opportunity. I think we're going to see it advance. I'm seeing so many startups really digging into the space and providing incredible opportunities. I would say, many in industry still associate real world evidence with some of the, monitoring the safety, post approval, but this is massive underutilization. And the
Right.
real opportunity for real world data is to answer questions like some of the examples you shared. It's to answer the questions that determine whether a clinical program succeeds or fails before you even get a patient in the door. With AI, the big pivot and the big shift is now getting into that predictive and prescriptive lens. The what will happen and under what scenarios, what next best action should we take? This is huge. We use it on our Amazon shopping carts, right? Or whatever is your best and favorite, online shopping experience. But yet we don't take that same framework yet, more precise site selection. Where, traditionally in site selection, there's a reliance on who has historically, right, been a big recruiter, who do we know in the space, and now, when you think about AI powered real world data generating this real world evidence, we can identify some sites that have the actual patients that match the target protocol population. Right? It's not a finger in the air. We have about this many. We can recruit about 2 patients per site per month, right? It gets much more precise, and it opens up a huge opportunity to say, "Hey, we need to find underrepresented patients. We need to find, to meet the diversity requirements. We need to figure out how to identify signals that a site starts to, go south before we have a delay in the recruitment, which could extend the trial timeline by a month." We don't have a month. Patients don't have a month.
Yeah, and we and as you know, we have a product that we have built in this space, which we are most proud of, by the way, today. That actually uses real world data in the US and then helps people find where the right patients are for enrollment. And we the other day we were talking to one of the biggest pharma on earth, and they are running a program, a trial in the CV space, and you know we showed them the possible, and this is amongst the top 10 pharma companies in the world, right? And they have access to everything, right? We showed them the platform where you just type in your inclusion exclusion criteria, and then basis that it just browses through the real world data of patients, sites, everything that our platform curates, right? And then it tells you what are the sites that owns most of your patients, right? And then it also tells you, what is the probability of these patients actually completing your trial. And they were blown away. They had never seen anything like that. We were calling our platform something else. They said, let's call this, the client suggested, said, let's call this readiness intelligence. Something I heard for the first time. So they said, this is readiness intelligence that we've been looking for. And, you know, they told me that for every single patient enrollment, one patient enrollment, they end up spending more than half a million, sometimes even $1 million on one patient. And I mean, I I had no idea what surprised me from that conversation, Victoria, and I want your take on it, is how come the biggest pharma or one of the biggest pharma companies in the world was looking at this solution for the first time built by a company like me?
For so many reasons, I would say. So, one of the things that you did brilliantly is that you identified a friction point and you provided a solution to address that friction point.
Okay.
Think about a pharma executive. We have so many friction points, right? Like I said, my really long Excel spreadsheet of all of the great ideas that all need to be solved. There's just so much to do. You have a unique value proposition. You don't have to solve for everything. You can focus in and bring a solution to a specific end and a specific component. Remember, I said end to end really ticks me off? End to end ticks me off because it's hard to do end to end. You said, here, I got one point, and this is the point, and I am the expert.
Do you think the uptake of real world evidence as an expert yourself, do you take the uptake of the use case of real world evidence in clinical decision intelligence, or either on the patient enrollment side or protocol design side, whichever side, right? Do you think this trend going upwards and upwards, or do you see some challenges or some future challenges that this trend might encounter?
I do see some challenges because I think it's the data and the evidence and the insights alone are not enough. We have, to exactly the point you said, we have some data. Many of the largest pharma companies buy and utilize real world data assets, right?
Yeah.
But how that utilization makes its way to an insight that is embedded into a workflow and into a decision making process is challenging, right? So that's going to be where I would see friction because we need to figure out what is the problem that we're solving. Do we have, the right context and information around it? And do we have a solution that can solve that problem at scale? Remember my pilot purgatory. Solving the problem one time is great. Solving the problem every single time is better.
All right. Okay. Uh, you know, you are, and if I'm allowed to say, you are, you know, um, yourself in a transition space at the moment, right? And you are trying to do exciting things. You have been a very successful pharma executive for 13 plus years. And as I said, you are actually from Ben. So, and something that I find very very interesting and quite unique is, so you are a PhD in biostat. So you have been working on data before AI. So so you have actually been in the trenches with data, right? So you've seen this entire space, and then you yourself have uh, you know taken you stepped out. You want to do exciting stuff. For those who are, let's say, at a global pharma company today, brimming with use cases, now feeling the additional superpower of Claude, where they can pursue ideas, right? And who want to take the journey of entrepreneurship now, right? Like you decided on. What advice would you have for them?
The biggest unlocking moments for me have been in taking that AI and my knowledge and my skills and building solutions for real life. I have built my own agents. I have built,
Ah,
yeah, I've built my own resources. I've built um, digital products that I'm looking to sell. I've built a second brain.
I
That
remember you telling me that you bought a second laptop just to run co-work.
Yes, exactly. And I think, and Claude Code as well, right? I mean, and there's so many fun tools, but I have an ecosystem I've built out. These are the tools I use. This is how I'm going to use them. I'm
Yes,
currently migrating off of my one tool that I've used to another.
sure.
Um, I've got, an ecosystem of 7 agents. I have an AI chief of staff. In my corporate role, I had a chief of staff, I had an executive assistant, I had direct reports who were directors who, helped me filter. I had, subject matter experts and expert advisors. I don't have that anymore. But I have the knowledge, the information. And so Steve Jobs, is one of my current board advisors because I have a lot of published information on how he thinks and how he might approach certain problems. And I can consult with him when I need to. That's incredible. Right? That's incredible. So, my biggest recommendation to, people is to build. Build on your own, build in your own safe environment. It might not be appropriate to do some of that building in your work ecosystem. But
Right.
to those who are in big pharma, you got to just get in there. You've got to try it out. You have to become a builder. I really see that companies who are, how can I say it? Companies who are or who will win, companies who will win in this space will not be the ones who have the most sophisticated AI, right? We're not talking about, the, advantage of the one algorithm or another. Right? The companies who will win in this space are truly the ones that have built that governance and safety infrastructure to make their AI trustworthy. Trustworthy to regulators, trustworthy to clinical teams they want to use, and ultimately trustworthy to the patients whose data we're all consuming to inform what is happening and what we should and should not be doing going forward. So that is, where I would say we need to get really into the human elements because, your AI and LLMs, are sometimes wrong, but never in doubt. That is not a
Yeah.
coworker I would trust.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. So that's interesting. So the companies in this space that are going to win are not the one who have the best AI and also not the one who solve the biggest problem, but the ones who solve the biggest problems with the best data governance structure.
With the best trust, with the best responsible AI.
And that's the biggest differentiator if you are pitching to a pharma company, right?
I would say so, yes. The biggest challenge I see is why should we trust you? If you can take down the barrier of trust and demonstrate you're solving a real friction point, that's actually a problem,
Okay.
you're in.
Wow. I think all right. I might even edit this out because I want this advice only for myself now. I don't need I don't need this to go to competition. Before we close, a quick rapid fire round and just one or two word answer only. Uh whenever you're ready, right?
Let's go.
All right, cool. So most overhyped tool in pharma AI right now.
The data catalog.
Okay, all right. Uh, most underrated capability no one is talking about. I think I know what you're going to say.
Data governance.
One job inside pharma that will not exist in 5 years.
Elements of programming.
Agreed. One that will exist that does not exist today.
HR and quality for AI agent coworkers.
Oh, oh wow, that is exciting. I need to stop rapid fire right here. Can you talk a little more about this?
Yeah. We need to think about how to treat some of these AI agents as coworkers because if they are handling tasks independently, it's not unlike a colleague on the org chart with you. They, however, are still going to be bound by the people they report to with following ethics, not using harassing language. I had one of my AI tools say to me, "Holy shit, Victoria, this is great new information." I don't use that kind of language naturally. Um, so,
I use
there's
AI all the time. I'm like,
but
I use backwards with AI all the time. I thought that's cool.
and so I think you got we the HR component is really also around how to integrate those AI agents alongside the human coworkers and how to make sure that
Wow.
managers are managing those AI agents as they would. Like you said, a human can produce bad output, so can AI.
Yeah.
So who is ultimately responsible? Of course, the human is who delivered it, but also their management who allowed it to go through, which is where the trust comes into play. And so that means that we need to train people to know the things to look at. That means we still need to do critical thinking, which is going to be one of maybe the biggest things. Maybe that's so that should have been my answer. The biggest thing we're not talking about is people continuing to be critical thinkers and actually pushing back on some of the answers that they're getting out of these AI tools. Like, we need to be training for that because people assume it's truth.
Wow.
It's not.
Oh, can I tell you something? I mean, because this is so exciting what you just said. So, oh, here at my company, I built an AI agent, right? And we call it the boss. I mean, that's just kind of a thin layer on top of Claude, right? And it is excessive. So that has the context of all the projects that we are running separately for engineering, sales, finance, all of that. And it has MCP of my CRMs and so everything connected. My co-founder, right? He's, by the way, shit scared of his wife, and he needs to leave office by 8:30 at night, and that's when we are at our peak productivity here in India, at least. So, he the moment he's querying in, and it is 8:30, immediately the boss starts writing down to my partner saying, you not this is the time you leave because you're going to get a real one from a wife. Do you think when you say HR for AI agent, so do you think when the HR for AI agent will come in, the HR will not let me do this?
I think we'll have to see what happens, but, the question is, um, do we govern your boss,
Sure.
agent, differently than we would govern you? So if it is
Okay.
appropriate for you, and if
Uh-huh.
it is appropriate within your organization that these are the rules and guardrails and it's appropriate for all the people, then the AI agent should be held to the same standards. The standards shouldn't be lower, they shouldn't be higher.
Okay. All right. Wow. I thought I'm going to have a very fun agent for lifetime, but seems like HR is going to be on its back too. All right. Okay. Uh, you know, back to rapid fire. Two final questions. One conference every founder in this space should actually go to.
D-Farm is one of my favorite conferences, but CNS Summit, I think, is also, those are really where pharma and innovation come together, and I just love those meetings.
Wow. Okay. And final question: coffee, matcha, or a proper Indian chai?
Ooh, I would love a proper Indian chai.
Perfect. Right choice. Nothing in the world tastes better than the Indian chai. Indian masala chai. I think Starbucks in the US have ruined it. I think they call it some chai latte or something. I mean, that's like an illegal child of a coffee and a tea that doesn't work.
I can't wait to try it.
Thank you so much for your time. And some of the answers I was not ready for. So I had a great time, Victoria. Thank you so much for your time. For me, the line I'm going to remember from this conversation is never say end to end in any conversation, at least when pitching to you. Founders building in this space, go back, listen to the founder segment twice. Pharma operators, send the governance segment to the person you have been arguing with for the last 6 months. And everybody else, keep an eye on Victoria. Whatever she's building next, you're going to want to know about it before everyone else does. And where to find her, we'll put the link in the description of this video. I am Ayush Mishra. And this has been the best AI show on pharma. See you on the next one.